Greetings, void-born terrors. In the grim darkness of the far future, humanity faces extinction from 1,000 directions. Orc hordes that drown worlds in green tides, tyrannid swarms that devour entire systems, chaos legions that corrupt from within. These threats at least announce themselves. They roar, they rampage, they reveal their nature in fire and blood. But some xenos are more patient. Some do not conquer through strength of arms or superiority of numbers. Some horrors do not announce their presence with war cries or invasion fleets. Some xenos kill, others infiltrate, the Slaugth replace. Tonight you will bear witness to classified testimony, a fragment of forbidden knowledge that the Inquisition would prefer remain buried in their deepest vaults. This is the account of Interrogator Valence Kade, who discovered firsthand what it means when the Slaugth come to a world, when they nest, when they feed, when they hollow out humanity from within and wear our faces like masks. But before we descend into this nightmare, heed these words. Mark this chronicle with your approval. Let the Emperor witness it through your engagement. Enlist with our ranks by subscribing to this archive, and strike the bell of notification so you won't miss future transmissions from the front lines of forbidden lore. For those who would bolster our cause further, consider offering tribute on Ko-fi. As always, support is appreciated, never mandated. You will find the link in the archives below. What you are about to hear may disturb you. It may make you question who walks beside you. It may make you wonder if the person you saw this morning is truly the same person you'll see tonight. The Slaugth are patient, the Slaugth are thorough, and the Slaugth are already here. Now, steel yourself. The testimony begins. Chapter 1. The Silent Hive. I have served the Holy Ordos for 17 years. In that time, I have walked through the smoldering ruins of heretic temples, interrogated cultists who carved blasphemies into their own flesh, and purged genestealer covens from the bowels of hive cities. I have seen humanity at its worst, and witnessed the xenos at their most insidious. Nothing prepared me for Mortensis Secundus. My name is Valence Kade, interrogator in service to Inquisitor Vaughn of the Ordo Xenos. The mission briefing was routine, or as routine as anything becomes in our line of work. Reports had surfaced of a suspected genestealer cult in Hive Tertius, one of 6 sprawling population centers on this unremarkable agri-world. The signs were textbook: worker productivity declining, vox traffic containing coded phrases, an uptick in disappearances among the lower hive. Command wanted eyes on the ground before committing to a full purge. I assembled my retinue with care. Tech Priest Osran, augmented and efficient, his mind more machine than man, but reliable in crisis. Medigi Officer Seland, whose expertise with xenos biology had proven invaluable on 3 prior investigations. A squad of 6 Arbites enforcers, hardened veterans who'd seen their share of cult activity. Enough firepower to handle reconnaissance, not so much that we'd spook our targets into hiding. We made planetfall at dawn, our Aquila lander setting down on a landing platform on the hive's upper levels. The approach had been uneventful. From altitude, Mortensis Secundus looked like every other Imperial world. Sprawling cities connected by transit lines, factories belching smoke into grey skies, the endless toil of the Emperor's servants. But the moment the ramp descended and I stepped onto the platform, I knew something was wrong. It was too quiet. Hive cities are never quiet. They roar with life, the thunder of machinery, the babble of crowds, the hum of transit systems, the distant echo of factorum shifts changing. Even in the dead of night, a hive breathes with the sound of 10 million souls packed into too little space. This hive was breathing, yes, but shallowly, distantly, as if it had been sedated. Interrogator. Osran's vox-modulated voice crackled beside me. Atmospheric readings are nominal. No airborne toxins detected, no viral agents, no radiation spikes. Then why does the air taste sterile? I muttered. Selen stepped up beside me, medical auspex already scanning. She frowned behind her rebreather. Oxygen levels normal. Particulate count actually lower than standard hive levels. It's clean. Too clean. We proceeded into the hive proper, moving from the landing district toward the administratum sector, where local Arbeits had their precinct fortress. The street should have been packed with morning shift workers. Instead, we passed perhaps a dozen citizens in the first 100 meters. They walked with purpose, heads down, not running but not dawdling either. Not one of them looked at us. "Citizens," I called out to a man in workers' overalls. "A moment of your time." He didn't slow, didn't acknowledge, just kept walking, eyes fixed straight ahead. One of my enforcers moved to intercept him, but I raised a hand. "Let him go." "Interrogator?" the enforcer asked. "Watch," I said quietly. We observed as the worker reached an intersection. 3 other citizens approached from different directions. All 4 arrived at the corner simultaneously, paused for precisely the same duration, then proceeded in their respective directions without collision or acknowledgement. Synchronized, precise, inhuman in their coordination. "Emperor's teeth," Sealand whispered. We saw it again and again as we moved deeper into the district. Citizens moving in eerie coordination. No conversation, no eye contact, no variation in pace. They looked human, dressed in standard Imperial work garb, wearing the same grime and fatigue that marked every hive dweller. But something fundamental was absent. Some spark of humanity had been extinguished, leaving only hollow vessels going through motions. "They all stare," I murmured to myself, "but none of them see." The Arbeits' precinct fortress loomed ahead, a reinforced structure of rockcrete and iron. Its gates stood open. That alone raised every hair on the back of my neck. Arbeits' precincts are never left unsecured, especially not in a hive district under investigation. We entered with weapons drawn. The interior was empty of living Arbeits. The duty stations were abandoned, cogitator screens still flickering with unfinished reports. A cup of recaf sat on one desk, still faintly warm. We found the bodies in the holding cells. 7 Arbeits, still in their carapace armor, sprawled across the floor in various positions of death. No signs of struggle, no lace burns or bolt wounds, no obvious cause of death at all. They simply looked as though they'd collapsed where they stood. "Medici," I ordered. "Full examination. Now." Selen moved immediately to the nearest corpse, her auspex humming as she worked. Osrin began interfacing with the precinct cogitators, extracting logs. My enforcers established a perimeter, eyes scanning shadows and doorways. I knelt beside one of the fallen Arbeits. His eyes were open, staring at nothing. His face was slack, expression empty. I'd seen death in 1,000 forms, but this was different. There was no fear in his features, no pain, no final emotion at all. Just absence. "Interrogator." Selen's voice was tight, controlled, but I heard the edge beneath it. "Report. External examination shows no trauma, no toxins in preliminary blood scan, no obvious pathogen markers." She paused, hands hovering over her instruments. "But body temperature is wrong. They've been dead approximately 6 hours based on rigor, but internal temperature suggests activity, metabolic activity, post-mortem." I stood slowly. "Impossible." "I need to open one up," she said, meeting my eyes. "I need to see what's inside." 20 minutes later, Selen stepped back from the autopsy she'd performed on the precinct floor, her gloves slick with blood and something else. something that glistened wetly in the artificial light, something that moved with a life independent of the corpse it inhabited. Her face had gone white beneath her rebreather. "Interrogator," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "This wasn't a Genestealer cult." "Then what?" "There's something inside him, something that's been eating him from within, something that's been replacing him." In the silence that followed, I heard it. A wet, writhing sound from deep within the corpse's chest cavity. Something was still alive in there, and it was moving toward the surface. Chapter 2. Beneath the skin. "Scalpel," Seelan said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. I watched from 3 paces back as she worked, my bolt pistol drawn and aimed at the corpse on the floor. Ridiculous, perhaps, to aim a weapon at a dead man. But the thing moving inside his chest cavity suggested that dead was a matter of perspective. The precinct's surgical lamps cast harsh white light across the scene. Seelan had arranged her instruments with methodical precision. Scalpels, bone saws, specimen containers, her medical auspex humming softly as it recorded every detail. Osran stood beside her, his multiple mechadendrites extending to hold additional lights and scanning equipment. "Preliminary examination confirms subject is deceased," Seelan began, falling into the clinical cadence of a formal autopsy report. "Time of death approximately 6 hours prior, rigor mortis consistent with that timeline. However," she paused, auspex sweeping across the torso. "Internal temperature reads at 31 degrees, 4 degrees higher than ambient. Thermal imaging shows concentrated heat signatures within thoracic and abdominal cavities." "Impossible," I said. "A body doesn't generate heat 6 hours post-mortem." "No, Interrogator, a body doesn't." Her eyes met mine. "But something inside this body does." She pressed the scalpel to the sternum and began the primary incision. The blade parted skin and subcutaneous tissue cleanly. Standard procedure. But as she reached the rib cage and began cutting through cartilage, the smell hit us. Not decay, not the expected odor of death and voided bowels. This was something else entirely, acrid and chemical, like burning plastic mixed with rotten meat and something almost metallic. One of my enforcers gagged and stepped back. I forced myself to remain still, breathing shallowly through my mouth. Seelan peeled back the ribcage. "Emperor preserve us," Osran's Vox voice crackled. The chest cavity was wrong, fundamentally, horrifically wrong. Where there should have been lungs and heart, where the architecture of human anatomy should have been familiar even in death, there was instead a nest of things. Pale, segmented forms, each perhaps the length of my hand, writhed slowly in the cavity. Dozens of them, packed tightly together like larvae in a hive. Their bodies glistened with a translucent mucus that caught the light with an oily sheen. But these were not simple organic creatures. Along their lengths, I could see metallic structures integrated into their flesh. Circuitry, sensor nodes, things that might have been weapons or tools. Biomechanical augmentation, Osran stated, his mechadendrites extending sensors toward the cavity. Xenos origin, technology I cannot identify. The integration between organic tissue and machine components is extraordinary, far beyond even Mechanicus' capabilities. Seelan used forceps to extract one of the larvae carefully. It writhed weakly in her grip, its body segmented like a maggot, but far more substantial. As she held it under the light, I saw that its head, if it could be called that, bore tiny mandibles and what looked like drilling appendages. "It's been eating him," she said quietly. "Look here." She pointed into the cavity. Where the left lung should have been, there was only a hollow space lined with a fibrous, web-like substance. The heart was partially consumed, its chambers colonized by the larvae. The liver was gone entirely, replaced by a pulsating mass of the creatures. They consumed the organs, Seelan continued, and replaced them. This webbing, she indicated the fibrous substance. It's partially organic, partially synthetic. It maintains structural integrity, keeps the body upright and functional while they feed. The host would have appeared normal from the outside, walking, talking, performing basic functions. But inside, how long? I demanded. How long does this process take? Osrin's sensors swept the cavity methodically. Based on the degree of organ replacement and tissue consumption, I estimate between 4 and 6 weeks. The process appears gradual, systematic. The host would have experienced minimal disruption to cognitive function until the final stages. A cold horror settled over me. 6 weeks. This Arbites had been walking around for 6 weeks while something ate him alive from the inside. Had he known? Had he felt it? Interrogator, one of my enforcers called from across the room. You need to see this. I moved to where he stood over another fallen Arbites. This one had collapsed near the precinct's Vox station, one hand still reaching toward the transmit switch. Open him up, I ordered. Seelan moved to the second body with visible reluctance. This autopsy was faster, less methodical. The same incision, the same chemical stench, the same fundamental wrongness. But the infestation here was less advanced. The lungs were only partially consumed. The heart was damaged but still mostly intact. There were fewer larvae, perhaps a dozen instead of dozens, and something else. This one tried to fight it, Seelan said, pointing to scarring around the cavity walls. See these burn marks? Lasfire, self-inflicted. He knew what was happening to him. He tried to burn them out. I felt my jaw tighten. The Arbites had realized he was compromised, had tried to cauterize the infestation from within, probably knowing it would kill him, had reached for the Vox to warn someone, and failed. A memory surfaced, something I'd read years ago in the restricted archives of the Inquisitorial Fortress on Scintilla. A fragment of a report, heavily redacted, from an investigation centuries past. Xenos infiltrators, not genostealers, something else, something that consumed from within. The classification had been obsidian black, forbidden even to most inquisitors. The word used in that fragment was one I'd never heard elsewhere, Slaugth. The people outside, I said slowly, realization crystallizing into certainty. The ones walking in coordination, the ones who won't respond. How many of them are like this? How many are already hollowed out? Seelan's face went pale. The entire district reported sick 3 weeks ago. 10,000 people. 10,000 potential hosts. The corpse's mouth suddenly gaped open with a wet, cracking sound. We all jumped back, weapons raising. From between the dead Arbite's lips, something emerged. Another larva, larger than the others, pulled itself out with disturbing strength. Its mandibles worked rhythmically, and along its body, the metallic augmentations glowed with a faint amber light. It turned what might have been sensory organs toward us, and somewhere in the hive, something screamed. Not a human scream, something else, something that resonated through the walls and floor, a sound that bypassed ears entirely and vibrated directly in bone and teeth. Osrin's mechadendrites suddenly spasmed. Interrogator. Massive electromagnetic pulse detected. Source. Everywhere. The entire district is generating coordinated transmission. The Vox units died. Every one of them, simultaneously. The cogitators flickered and went dark. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing the precinct in red. My microbead was silent. Dead. We were cut off. In the crimson gloom, I watched the lava that had emerged from the corpse's mouth drag itself across the floor with deliberate purpose, leaving a glistening trail behind it. It moved toward the doorway, toward the street outside, toward the 10,000 citizens of Hive Tertius, who walked with empty eyes and synchronized steps. The citizens who were already dead, the citizens who just didn't know it yet. "Seal the doors," I said quietly. "Nobody goes in or out until we understand what we're dealing with." But even as I gave the order, I heard them. Footsteps outside, dozens of them, hundreds, all moving in perfect synchronization, all converging on the precinct. They knew we were here, and they were coming. Chapter 3. The Maggot Men. Combat Report. First contact. The first one through the door looked like someone's father. Grey-haired, barrel-chested, wearing a factorum worker's coveralls. His face was slack, eyes unfocused. He walked with the mechanical precision I'd seen on the streets, hands at his sides, no weapon visible. "Halt," I commanded. "Identify yourself." He didn't respond, didn't even acknowledge the words, just kept walking toward us with that same measured pace. Behind him, the doorway filled with more. A woman in administratum robes, 2 young men in mining gear, an elderly woman who might have been someone's grandmother, all moving in perfect lockstep, all with those empty, staring eyes. "Warning shots," I ordered. My enforcers fired lass bolts into the ceiling. The crack of energy weapons should have stopped them, should have triggered some survival instinct. The citizens didn't flinch, didn't break stride. They kept coming. "They're not responding to deterrence," Enforcer Karth said, his voice tight. "I can see that." I aimed my bolt pistol at the lead figure, the grey-haired worker. "Last warning, stand down or we will fire." The man's mouth opened. For a moment I thought he might speak. Instead, something wet and pale pushed past his lips. A lava, larger than the ones we'd seen in the corpses, squeezed out and dropped to the floor with a disgusting plop. The man's jaw unhinged further, wider than any human jaw should open, and more of them spilled out. 3, 5, 7 writhing things that hit the ground and immediately began scuttling toward us. "Contact front! Fire!" The precinct erupted in lass fire. Bolts seared into the advancing citizens. The grey-haired man took 3 hits to the chest, burning holes through his coveralls. He staggered, but he didn't fall. Instead, his chest cavity burst open from within, and dozens of the larvae poured out like a flood of maggots from rotting meat. They moved fast. "Fall back," I shouted, firing my bolt pistol into the mass. The explosive rounds detonated among them, sending pale bodies flying. But for everyone I killed, 3 more emerged from the collapsing host bodies. The citizens were just containers, shells. The real threat was what wore them. We retreated through the precinct, firing as we went. The larvae surged after us, a writhing carpet of pale flesh and glinting metal. Some tried to climb the walls. Others merged together, forming larger composite organisms. The biomechanical integration allowed them to coordinate, to adapt. When we sealed a doorway, they found ventilation ducts. When we blocked those, they began eating through the walls themselves, mandibles chewing through rockcrete with disturbing efficiency. "The main exit!" Salen shouted. "We have to reach the street!" "Negative," Osran's Vox voice crackled. "Thermal sensors detect 300 life signs surrounding the precinct perimeter. They've boxed us in." 300. Emperor's Mercy. We reached the precinct's vehicle bay. 2 Arbites rhinos sat idle, armored transports that could punch through the cordon. Karth was already moving toward one when the bay doors shuddered. Something massive slammed against them from outside. Once. Twice. The reinforced metal buckled inward. "They're trying to breach," Enforcer Drell shouted. The doors exploded inward. The citizens came through en masse, a tide of hollow-eyed puppets. But these were different. Some had been dead longer, their bodies further colonized. Their movements were more fluid, more purposeful. The integration between host and parasite was nearly complete. I saw one man, or what had been a man, whose entire left arm had split open to reveal a nest of larvae that functioned as a single appendage. He pointed that grotesque limb at Drell, and the larvae extended like a whip, wrapping around the enforcer's throat. Drell screamed. Lasfire cut the limb, severing it. But the damaged larvae didn't die. They burrowed. In seconds, they'd torn through Drell's armor seals and forced their way inside, under his skin, into his flesh. Drell, no. Karth raised his weapon. Do it, Drell gasped, clawing at his own neck where something writhed beneath the skin. Do it now. I fired first. The bolt shell took him in the chest, detonating. It was mercy, quick, clean, better than what was happening inside him. His body collapsed. And even in death, I saw movement beneath his armor. Saw the bulges where things were already beginning to nest. Move, I roared. Everybody in the Rhino! We scrambled aboard, lasfire and bolt rounds keeping the horde at bay. Selen dragged Karth, who stood frozen where his squad mate had fallen. Osrin's mechadendrites lashed out, striking down any creature that got too close. I provided covering fire, each shot carefully placed. Headshots didn't work. The brain was already consumed. Center mass only worked if you hit enough larvae to drop the host body. The most effective method was overwhelming firepower. Burn them all. The Rhino's engine roared to life. We piled inside, and Karth slammed the assault ramp closed, just as a wave of citizens crashed against it. Their fists hammered on the armored hull, a drumbeat of meat on metal. Go! I shouted to the enforcer at the controls. The Rhino lurched forward, crushing bodies beneath its treads. Through the vision slits, I watched citizens throw themselves at us with no regard for their own survival, because they were already dead. They were just transportation, ammunition. The real enemy was inside them, and it didn't care how many host bodies it spent. We crashed through the precinct gates and into the street. The scene outside was apocalyptic. Hundreds of citizens filled the roadway, all converging on our position. But they weren't just attacking randomly. There was purpose to their movement. Organization. They're herding us, I realized aloud. Look at their formation. They're not trying to stop us. They're guiding us. Osrin's sensors swept the street. Confirmed. The concentration of contacts is lighter to the northeast, toward the central spire, I finished. They want us to go there. Then we go south, Karth said. Opposite direction. Negative. I studied the tactical display. If they want us there, it's because that's where we'll find answers. The source, the nest, whatever intelligence is coordinating this. With respect, Interrogator, that's insane. Probably. I checked the charge on my bolt pistol. Do it anyway. We turned toward the spire. The horde parted slightly, creating a corridor through their mass. Confirmation. They were herding us. But why? What waited at the central spire that they wanted us to see? Osrin's sensors suddenly squealed. Massive energy signature detected. Bearing 045, distance 3 kilometers. Source, deep underground. The reading is, Emperor preserve us. That much power could what? The tech priest's voice was hollow with dread. Could sustain a population of millions. Not thousands. Millions. The implications settled over us like a shroud. This wasn't an isolated infection. This wasn't a localized outbreak. Whatever intelligence coordinated these creatures, it had been here for far longer than we'd realized. Planning. Preparing. building something beneath the hive that would dwarf anything we'd seen on the surface. I pulled out my data slate and began recording. If we didn't survive this, someone needed to know what we'd found. Field report. Interrogator Valence Kade. Xenos infiltration confirmed on Mortensis Secundus. Species unknown, but I believe they match fragments in restricted archives. Designation: Slaugth. They don't kill us. They don't conquer us. They hollow us out and wear us like suits. They replace us so perfectly that by the time anyone notices, it's already too late. I paused, watching through the vision slit as thousands of empty-eyed citizens tracked our passage through their ranks. They don't just kill us, I said quietly. They become us. The rhino rumbled toward the central spire, toward whatever waited in the dark beneath Mortensis Secundus, toward a horror that was already spreading through the Imperium like a cancer, one replaced human at a time. And we were driving straight into its heart. Chapter 4. The Hollowing. Interrogation record. What the host remembers. We found her in a HAB unit 2 blocks from the central spire, not wandering with the others, not synchronized with the horde, just sitting at a small table, hands folded in front of her, staring at a cold cup of recap. She looked up as we burst through the door, weapons raised, and she smiled, a weak, trembling thing that didn't reach her eyes. "Thank the Emperor," she whispered. I thought I'd be alone when it finished. Her name was Sarah Vensk, 32 years old, factory supervisor, married with 1 child. All information she volunteered immediately, as if desperate to prove her humanity while she still could. We restrained her, not cruelly, but firmly, and brought her into the rhino. She didn't resist, didn't even seem surprised, just kept whispering that she was grateful we'd found her. That should have been my first warning. I sat across from her in the cramped interior, my bolt pistol resting on my thigh. Not aimed at her, but close. Karth stood guard at the assault ramp. Selen prepared medical instruments with shaking hands, though we both knew there was nothing she could do. Osran recorded everything, his mechadendrites adjusting sensors and data capture equipment. Sarah's eyes met mine. They were brown, human, but something moved behind them, like shadows swimming beneath ice. "How long?" I asked. 3 weeks. Her voice was steady, eerily calm. "Since I first felt it, since I knew something was wrong. Tell me everything. From the beginning." She took a breath. When she spoke, her words came with the precision of someone clinging desperately to clarity while they still possessed it. "It was in the water, we think. The main recycle lines for our district. Or maybe the nutri-paste, hard to tell. Everyone in my work block got sick around the same time. Headaches, nausea, nothing serious. Nothing that would make you report to Medicaid. We thought it was just another contamination. Happens all the time in the lower hive. But it wasn't contamination. No." She looked down at her hands. The headaches got worse, then they stopped. That should have been good, but it wasn't. It was like something had solved the problem, made the pain go away. And I realized that the solution hadn't come from me. Something else had fixed it. Something inside. Seelan leaned forward, Auspex humming. "Did you see Medicaid?" "I tried, they said I was fine. All scans came back normal." Sarah's laugh was bitter. "Normal. That's when I knew how deep it went. The Medicaid staff were already compromised, already hollowed. They looked at me with those empty eyes and sent me home." "When did you first see them?" I asked quietly. "The larvae." Her hands clenched. 4 days ago. I was brushing my teeth, felt something in my mouth. Thought it was just, I don't know, food. I spat it into the sink and her voice cracked. It moved. Emperor, it moved. This pale thing, no bigger than my thumb, writhing in the drain. I tried to wash it away, but it crawled back up, against the water flow, like it knew I was trying to kill it. Did you tell anyone? My husband. The word came out strangled. He looked at me with those eyes, those empty dead eyes, and he said, "It's normal. Don't worry." In this flat, emotionless voice. That's when I knew he was already gone, already replaced. And our daughter, she couldn't finish. Tears ran down her cheeks. I gave her a moment. Then, what happened next? I locked myself in here, stopped eating, stopped drinking. Thought maybe I could starve it, but it doesn't need me to eat. It's already inside, already feeding, on my organs, on my blood, on me. She looked up, and for a moment, her eyes weren't entirely her own. It's eating my memories. That's the worst part. I remember things, but I don't know if they're mine anymore or if they're... There, I pressed. It's memories, she whispered. The thing inside me. It has memories, Interrogator. So many memories. Thousands of them. Millions. It's old. So impossibly old. And there are so many of them. So many voices all connected, all sharing everything they consume. Every person they hollow out adds to the collective. Every mind they eat becomes part of the whole. Osrin's mechadendrites twitched. She's describing a distributed consciousness, a hive intelligence. We know, Sarah said, then blinked, shook her head. It knows. Emperor, forgive me, I can't tell the difference anymore. What do they want? I demanded. Why infiltrate? Why this method? She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. Subtly. The inflection slightly off, the cadence mechanical. Conquest is inefficient. War draws attention. The Imperium responds to invasion with overwhelming force. But a population that appears healthy, that continues to function, that files its reports and meets its quotas. Her lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. That the Imperium ignores. We have been here for decades, Interrogator Kade. We have been patient. We have been thorough. And now we are ready. Sarah, I said firmly, listen to my voice. You're still in there. Fight it. She clutched her head, face contorting. I am Sarah Vensk. I have a daughter named Maya. I work in Factorum 7. It is. The pronouns shifted mid-sentence. I watched her struggle, watched her identity fracture in real time. How many? I asked. How many have been replaced in this hive? The central districts, perhaps 40%. The outer rings less, but the acceleration is geometric. Each hollowed host produces dozens of larvae. In 3 more weeks, the hive will be entirely ours, theirs. She gasped. I don't know what I am anymore. Seelan's auspex chimed. She looked at the readings, then at me. Her face was ashen. Interrogator. The infestation in her cranial cavity is extensive. Brain tissue replacement at approximately 60%. She shouldn't even be capable of speech. The fact that she's still partially aware is what? Is agony, Sarah finished quietly. Every moment I feel myself disappearing. Feel my thoughts becoming its thoughts. My memories becoming its food. Do you understand? I'm not dying, Interrogator. I'm being digested. Slowly. Piece by piece. And I'm conscious for all of it. The rhino interior was silent, except for the distant sounds of the horde outside. Can you stop it? I asked Sealand, already knowing the answer. No. Once they're inside, once they've reached the brain, there's no extraction, no cure. She's already gone. She just doesn't know it yet. I know it, Sarah said. I've known it for days. Why do you think I stayed here? Why I didn't join them outside?" She met my eyes, and I saw her struggling to hold on to herself for just a moment longer, because I wanted to warn someone, before I became one of them completely, before I forgot that I was ever human. "What else?" I leaned forward. "Tell me everything before it's too late." "The ships," she gasped. "They're already in the ships. The transport barges that left port 3 days ago, heading to the sector capital, to other worlds, carrying workers to colonies. But they're not workers anymore. They're seeds, infiltrators. By the time anyone realizes, it will be..." Her back arched. She convulsed, mouth opening wide. Too wide. I saw movement at the back of her throat. "They know you're here," she forced out, voice distorting. "They've known since you arrived. They let you see. They wanted you to understand. Because by the time you can report this, by the time anyone believes you, it will already be too late. We're already..." "Sarah!" "My daughter," she sobbed, the words barely human now. "Tell her I tried. Tell her I loved. It loves..." The thing that looked out through her eyes wasn't Sarah anymore. I raised my bolt pistol. "Thank you," the thing that had been Sarah Vensk whispered with her lips. Then, horribly, "Emperor, forgive me." I didn't know if those final words came from Sarah or from the intelligence that had consumed her. Perhaps it didn't matter. I pulled the trigger. The bolt shell ended what was left of Sarah Vensk, ended her suffering, ended the intelligence piloting her hollowed body. But it didn't end the nightmare. Because I knew, with cold certainty, that she was right. They were already in the ships, already spreading, already becoming us. Chapter 5. The Nest. Descent log. Into the feeding chamber. The central spire's sub-levels descended farther than any Imperial schematic indicated. We found the access shaft hidden behind a maintenance panel, its entrance slick with that same translucent mucus we'd seen coating the larvae. The shaft went down, and down, and down. Thermal signature intensifying, Osrin reported, his sensors painting the darkness ahead of us. Source approximately 400 meters below ground level. Energy output sufficient to power a hive district. Interrogator, I must advise. Advised and noted, I cut him off. We're going down. Karth was the only enforcer left. The others had fallen during our push to the spire, consumed, hollowed, or simply torn apart by the horde. He checked his last rifle's charge pack with mechanical efficiency, his face a mask of professional calm that didn't quite hide the terror in his eyes. "No Vox contact with orbit," I said, stating what we all knew. "No way to call for exterminatus authorization. If there's an intelligence coordinating this, something we can eliminate or at least identify, we need to find it. Need to know what we're dealing with." "And if we don't make it back?" Karth asked. I patted the data slate mag-locked to my armor. "Then this recording gets found eventually, and maybe someone learns from our mistakes." We descended. The shaft was clearly xenos construction, though it mimicked Imperial engineering enough to suggest the Slaugth understood our architecture, understood how to hide within it. The walls were lined with that fibrous webbing, pulsing faintly with bioluminescence that cast everything in sickly green light. Every few meters, we passed alcoves where more larvae nested, dormant or perhaps waiting. Our boots squelched on organic matter that had been integrated into the metal grating. The temperature rose as we went deeper. The air grew thick, humid, and that acrid chemical smell intensified until even our rebreathers couldn't fully filter it. Sweat soaked my undersuit. My breathing came heavy, and then the shaft opened up. Emperor preserve us. It opened up into a cathedral. The chamber was vast beyond comprehension, easily 300 meters across, carved from the bedrock beneath the hive. But this was no natural cave. This was engineered, designed. The walls weren't stone, they were biomechanical constructs, pulsing with life. Veins as thick as my arm ran along surfaces of living tissue, interwoven with metallic conduits. The ceiling was lost in shadows and steam, but I could see massive organic stalactites hanging down, each one a grotesque fang dripping with fluids. But it was the floor that made my blood run cold. Pools, dozens of them, each perhaps 10 meters across, filled with a viscous amber fluid that glowed from within. And in those pools, larvae writhed by the thousands, millions, more than I could count. They moved in undulating waves, a sea of pale flesh and glinting metal, feeding and growing and preparing. By the throne, Karth whispered. Along the chamber's perimeter, suspended in the walls themselves, were cocoons, hundreds of them, human-shaped. I moved closer to one, my bolt pistol raised, and saw through the translucent membrane the shape of a person inside. A man, still alive, his chest rising and falling slowly. His mouth was open in a silent scream, and through his skin I could see them moving. The larvae burrowing through his body, consuming and replacing. "How long has this been here?" Saylan's voice cracked. Osrin's mechadendrites interfaced with a nearby terminal, a grotesque fusion of Imperial cogitator and xenos biotechnology. Data scrolled across his optical sensors. Emperor's Mercy. This nest. The construction estimates suggest 30 years. 3 decades of patient infiltration. 30 years. A generation. While the Imperium collected tithes and received reports and believed everything was normal, this had been growing beneath our feet. "There's more," Osrin continued, his vox voice unusually strained. "Records. Transport manifests. They've been shipping infected hosts off-world for 15 years. Mining colonies, agricultural settlements, even military recruitment tithes. Hundreds of thousands of individuals, all carrying larvae, all sent to seed new worlds. The scale of it crashed over me. This wasn't an isolated infection. This was systematic, strategic. The Slaugth weren't invading the Imperium, they were inheriting it. "Download everything," I ordered. "Every byte of data. If we die here, at least." Movement. Massive movement from the far end of the chamber. Something rose from the largest pool. Not a larva. Not a hollowed human puppet. This was something else entirely. Something that had never bothered with the pretense of humanity. It was perhaps 4 meters long, its body segmented like the larvae, but scaled up to nightmarish proportions. Pale, glistening flesh rippled with muscle beneath translucent skin. But integrated throughout its form were technological augmentations, sensory arrays, weapon systems, neural interfaces that glowed with amber light. Its head, if it could be called that, was a mass of mandibles and drilling appendages surrounding a cluster of optical sensors that fixed on us with terrible intelligence. And I felt it. A pressure in my mind. Not words exactly, but intent. Ancient. Patient. Utterly alien. It regarded us the way a human might regard bacteria under a microscope. Curious. Analytical. Completely without empathy. This was what coordinated the horde. What planned the infiltration. What had orchestrated the slow consumption of Mortensis Secundus, and Emperor knows how many other worlds. This was the Slaugth. "Run," I said quietly. The creature screamed, not with a mouth, with its entire body. The sound resonated through the chamber, through the air, through the very rock itself. Every larva in every pool began writhing violently. The cocoons split open. Half-formed hosts stumbled out, bodies not yet fully consumed, human enough to scream with human vocal cords, even as xenos puppeteers jerked them forward. "Run!" We bolted for the shaft. Lasfire painted the darkness behind us, as Karth fired blind, not aiming, just trying to slow the tide. I heard Selen's labored breathing as she struggled to keep pace. Osrin's mechadendrites lashed out, striking down anything that got close. The mature Slaugth surged after us with horrifying speed, its body undulating across the chamber floor. From orifices along its length, it expelled streams of larvae that hit the ground running. The half-formed hosts shambled forward with jerky, uncoordinated movements, their faces twisted in expressions of horror and agony as they were forced to hunt us down. We reached the shaft, started climbing. Below us, the tide of pale flesh and stolen bodies began to ascend. "Interrogator!" Osrin's voice was calm despite everything. "The melter charges. I can collapse the shaft, seal the chamber. Then do it and follow us up." Negative. His mechadendrites were already attaching the charges to support structures. The detonation sequence requires manual activation, proximity trigger. Someone must remain to ensure. "Osrin, no! It has been an honor serving the Emperor with you, Interrogator Kade." His optical sensors met my eyes. "Tell the Mechanicus I fulfilled my duties. Tell them I saw wonders and horrors beyond calculation. And tell them..." He paused, something almost human in his vox-modulated voice. "Tell them I chose this, not out of programming or obligation, but because it was right." The first larvae reached him. He didn't flinch. "Go. Now." I climbed. Karth and Salen scrambled ahead of me. Below, I heard the whine of melter charges arming. Heard Osrin's final binary prayer to the machine god. Heard the Slaughth's psychic scream of rage as it realized what was about to happen. The explosion was like a fist of an angry god. The shaft bucked, rockcrete shattered. A wave of superheated air blasted upward, singeing my hair even through my helmet. I clung to the ladder as debris rained down. The entire structure groaned, support columns failing, and for a terrible moment I thought the whole spire would collapse on top of us. Then silence, choking dust, the crackle of cooling metal. I looked down. Where the shaft had descended into nightmare, there was now only rubble. Tons of it. Osrin's sacrifice had sealed the nest, buried the breeding chamber, trapped the mature Slaugth and its spawn in their lair. But not forever. Already I could hear scraping, digging. They would emerge eventually. Patient, inexorable. We climbed the rest of the way in silence. When we finally emerged at ground level, the hive had descended into chaos. The psychic link had been disrupted when the nest was destroyed. The hollowed hosts wandered aimlessly, their coordination shattered. Some collapsed. Others tore at their own flesh as the larvae inside them died or went dormant. A few, those in earlier stages, screamed as they regained awareness of what had been done to them. In the distance, fires burned, sirens wailed. The few surviving genuine humans had realized something was terribly wrong and were fighting back. But it was too late for most of them. The infection had spread too far. Mortensis Secundus was lost, and I knew with cold certainty that it wasn't alone. Chapter 6. The Report. Inquisitorial Seal. Final Testament. The viewport of the Righteous Sanction offered an unobstructed view of Mortensis Secundus. From orbit, the planet looked almost peaceful. Clouds swirled across continents. Oceans reflected starlight. Cities glittered like scattered diamonds against the darkness. Then the first cyclonic torpedoes struck. Blossoms of atomic fire erupted across the surface. One after another, the warheads fell. Hive cities vaporized in microseconds. Atmospheric ignition turned clouds to plasma. The oceans began to boil. Within an hour, the entire planet would be a lifeless cinder, its crust molten, its atmosphere stripped away. 43 billion souls, gone. I stood at that viewport for the entire bombardment, watched every single detonation, bore witness to the erasure of a world. It was the least I could do for the people I'd failed to save. Interrogator Kade. I turned. Inquisitor Vaughn stood behind me, his augmetic eye whirring as it focused on my face. He'd arrived 6 hours after we escaped the hive, his strike cruiser translating in-system with the authority to order exterminatus. I'd delivered my report in the shuttle bay, still covered in blood and that translucent mucus, my words tumbling out in a desperate stream. He'd listened, reviewed the data Osran had died to retrieve, and without hesitation, he'd given the order. "How are you holding, Valence?" His use of my first name surprised me. Inquisitor Vaughn was not known for sentiment. "I've been better, my lord." "That's not what I asked." I looked back at the dying world. I keep thinking about Seravensk, about what she said, that they're patient, that they've been doing this for decades, centuries maybe. And I keep wondering, my voice cracked, how many other worlds, how many planets in the Imperium are already compromised, and we just don't know it yet? Vaughn was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. "The Slaugth are not unknown to the Inquisition, Valence. There have been other incidents, other investigations." I spun to face him. "Other incidents? My lord, if you knew." "We knew they existed. We didn't know the scale." He gestured to the viewport, to the world burning below us. "This changes our understanding considerably. Your report, your data, it will be disseminated to the highest levels. Precautions will be taken." Precautions? The word tasted like ash. We just killed 43 billion people because we couldn't tell who was human and who was a xenos puppet. What precautions could possibly... "Valence." His voice hardened. "You did what had to be done. What I would have done. What any servant of the throne would have done. The Slaught cannot be allowed to spread. If that means purging entire worlds on suspicion alone, then that is the price we pay." I wanted to argue, wanted to rage against the injustice of it. But I couldn't, because he was right. If we'd hesitated, if we'd tried to save individuals while the infiltration continued, the infection would have spread to other systems, other sectors. The Slaught's patience was their greatest weapon. By the time you realized they were there, it was already too late. "What happens now?" I asked quietly. "You'll be debriefed extensively. Your memories will be examined by an approved psyker to ensure no psychic contamination. Standard procedure for xenos contact." He paused. "Then you'll be given a choice. Return to active duty or take a period of recuperation. And the report will be classified under Obsidian Black Protocol, need-to-know basis only. The wider Imperium cannot know the full extent of Slaught infiltration. The panic alone would destabilize sectors. So we bury it, pretend it didn't happen. We contain it," Vaughn corrected. "We investigate quietly. We watch for signs. We remain vigilant. But we do not announce to the entire Imperium that anyone around them, their co-workers, their family, their commanders, could be a xenos parasite wearing human skin. That way lies madness and collapse." I understood the logic. Hated it, but understood it. The Imperium ran on faith and certainty. Tell people they couldn't trust their own perceptions, couldn't believe their own eyes, and the entire structure would crumble. Better to let the Inquisition handle it in the shadows. Better to sacrifice worlds in silence than risk sector-wide panic. But it meant we were always one step behind. always reacting, never preventing. Sayland, I asked, and Karth? Medici Officer Sealand is undergoing the same protocols as you. She'll be fine. Vaughan's expression darkened. Enforcer Karth is being held in isolation pending examination. My blood went cold. Held? Why? Precautionary measure. He was exposed to Slaugth contamination for an extended period. We need to ensure he's... Vaughan chose his words carefully. Clean. I thought about Karth, about the enforcer who'd fought beside me through the nest, who'd held the line while Osrin planted the charges, who'd climbed that shaft with grim determination. I thought about how he'd been quiet on the shuttle ride up, how he'd stared at his hands with an expression I couldn't quite read, how he'd hesitated just for a moment before responding to his name. "Emperor, preserve us," I whispered. "You think he's compromised?" I think we can't take chances. Vaughan's augmetic eye focused on me with uncomfortable intensity. Any more than I can take chances with you, Valence. You were exposed as well. You breathed the same air, touched the same surfaces, consumed the same water. The incubation period can be weeks, months even in some cases. The implication settled over me like a shroud. You're saying I might be infected. I'm saying we'll know soon enough. He gestured, and 2 armored guards appeared from the shadows. Until then, you'll be confined to isolation quarters. Comfortable, well-appointed, but monitored. I'm sure you understand. I did. But understanding didn't make the paranoia any less consuming. As the guards escorted me from the observation deck, I caught my reflection in a polished bulkhead. Gaunt face, hollow eyes. I looked exhausted, traumatized. But was that all I saw? Or was there something else behind my eyes? Some shadow that moved independently. Some intelligence that wasn't entirely my own. I blinked, and the reflection was just a reflection. Just me, tired, scared, human, I hoped. They kept me in isolation for 3 weeks. Medical examinations every 6 hours. Psychers probing my thoughts for xenos taint. Servo skulls recording my every movement, analyzing my patterns for signs of unnatural coordination. I spent the time writing, recording everything that happened on Mortensis Secundus. Every detail I could remember. Sarah's final words, Osrin's sacrifice, the sight of that mature Slaugth rising from its pool, the screams of people becoming aware of what had been done to them. And I wrote about my fears, about lying awake at night, feeling phantom movements beneath my skin, about staring at my reflection and wondering if the face staring back was truly mine, about the way certain thoughts seemed to come from nowhere, alien and intrusive. Was I losing my mind? Or was something already inside me, patient and methodical, waiting for the right moment to complete its work? On the 22nd day, Inquisitor Vaughan visited my cell. He looked tired, older than I remembered. "You're clean," he said without preamble. "The scans show no larvae, no xenos contamination. You're human, Valence. Fully human." The relief should have been overwhelming, but it wasn't. Because I immediately thought, that's exactly what they'd tell someone who was compromised. To make them believe, to make them compliant. Vaughan must have seen the doubt in my eyes. "I know," he said quietly. "I know you'll never be entirely certain. None of us can be. That's what makes the Slaugth so insidious. They don't just infiltrate bodies. They infiltrate trust, make us doubt ourselves and each other. In some ways, that's worse than the physical infection." "And Karth?" Vaughan's expression went carefully blank. Enforcer Karth was found to have early-stage contamination. 3 larvae in his lower intestine. They were removed. He was purged. The Emperor's mercy was swift. Executed. They'd executed him rather than risk the infection spreading. I should have felt something, horror, grief, anger, but all I felt was numb. Karth had been compromised. The decision had been correct, necessary. The fact that I could think that so calmly terrified me more than anything else. I returned to my quarters aboard the Righteous Sanction, a free man, cleared for duty. My report filed and sealed. Mortensis Secundus, a cooling sphere of glass and ash behind us. But I couldn't stop looking over my shoulder. Couldn't stop analyzing every interaction, every conversation, searching for signs that the person speaking to me wasn't entirely human. The ratings who served meals in the mess hall, did they move with slightly too much coordination? The junior interrogator who briefed me on our next assignment, did his eyes focus just a fraction too long before responding? Was I being paranoid or appropriately vigilant? I stood before my mirror tonight, the reflection staring back in the dim light of my quarters. I examined every feature, searched for any sign, any indication that I wasn't who I believed myself to be, and found nothing. Just Valence Kade, interrogator, survivor, human. Probably. I picked up my data slate and began my final entry. Field Journal, Interrogator Valence Kade. Final entry regarding Mortensis Secundus incident. In the Imperium of man, we face endless horrors. Orcs that overwhelm through numbers. Tyranids that consume through hunger. Chaos that corrupts through promise of power. These threats, at least, announce themselves. They can be met with bolter and blade, with faith and fire. But the Slaugth, they don't announce themselves. They don't conquer through strength. They don't corrupt through temptation. They simply wait. Patient, thorough, ancient beyond measure. They hollow us out one person at a time and wear our faces so perfectly that by the time anyone notices, entire worlds have already fallen. They don't conquer the Imperium. They inherit it. And the most terrifying truth I've learned, we may never know how far they've already spread. How many officials making decisions are already compromised. How many soldiers defending our worlds are xenos puppets. How many worlds are already lost and simply going through the motions until the Slaught decide it's time to reveal themselves. 43 billion souls died on Mortensis Secundus, and I suspect in the years to come that number will seem almost quaint. The Emperor protects. I have to believe that. I have to. I set down the slate and looked back at my reflection. It blinked a fraction of a second after I did. Or did it? In the dim light, it was impossible to be sure. Probably just exhaustion, trauma, paranoia. Probably. I turned away from the mirror and tried very hard not to think about the faint itch I'd been feeling deep in my skull, just behind my eyes. Just a headache, surely. Nothing to worry about. Nothing at all. You have now witnessed the testimony of Interrogator Valence Kade, one of the few surviving voices willing to speak of what happened on Mortensis Secundus. You have heard of the hollowed citizens, the biomechanical maggots, the nest beneath the spire, and the world-ending silence that followed. And yet, this account is only a fragment, a single ember torn from a much greater fire, because the Slaugth are still out there, patient, ancient, inheriting humanity one empty body at a time. Their infiltration continues, not with armies or war cries, but with mimicry, memory theft, and the quiet wearing of our skin. As the Imperium burns its own worlds to stop them, the question remains, how many more have already fallen? How many are already replaced? If this chronicle has stirred your suspicion, your fear, your vigilance, then mark it with your approval. Like, comment, and enlist by subscribing so you never miss another transmission. Your engagement strengthens this archive against the shadows. And remember, this horror is only one species among many. The Slaugth are not the only xenos that infiltrate, replace, or whisper beneath our skulls. The Emperor protects, but does he know who serves him? Until next time, Voidborn terrors. Trust no one.